At this point, most of you have heard that the district is moving forward with the replacement of CFS with FMS, the new PeopleSoft-based financial management system. Now, there will be a good amount of training that has to happen this summer to orient people to the new system. However, there are some underlying pieces that really impact how we think about and talk about our financial affairs that we really should talk about and understand before moving into FMS, so that folks are putting the right foot forward and understanding which direction this new system is taking us in. So in trying to understand FMS and some of the things that are changing, we're really going to focus on the chart of accounts, which is fundamentally that accounting string that you have to enter in anytime you do a requisition or hire a position. And it talks about which specific pot of funding, if you will, that we're using in order to fund whatever the purchase is. Now, looking at the individual pieces of this, and most folks probably haven't had to think about the individual pieces of this beyond the charge center, but the idea here is that you have the fund, which is telling you where the money came from, which implicitly tells you what the rules are for using that funding. The unit is which college or campus it's associated with. The charge center is sort of a jack of all trades. It includes it means something about department responsibility, what the funding was intended for, where it came from. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. The object is which type of revenue or which type of expenditure, what type of purchase that the funding is. So is it goods and services, is it salaries and benefits, etc. And lastly, there's the project idea, which is the number that's used to track capital projects and grants projects sort of separate from the bigger pool of funding. So those concepts haven't changed a lot. They're really going to be built into the new system. However, the words that we use and the order in which we put them and some of the defined meanings are changing a bit. So a good example is first the concept of unit. At Chandler Gilbert, there's the CGCC main unit 450, and then there's the Williams campus, which is 455. In the new system, that same idea exists, but it's going to be split into two separate fields, business unit and operating unit. The business unit will be the district office or individual colleges. The operating units will be the locations, the units that we operate as a college. The nice thing about separating the two of them out is that while each college has its unique locations, there's the opportunity to move or share operating units between business units. So a great illustration is the Community at Queen Creek, which is an operating unit of Chandler Gilbert Community College, but it is also an operating unit of Rio Salado. So now Chandler Gilbert and Rio Salado can both use the Community, and that's the connection between those two fields that make a unique space. Fund is staying the same as it's always been. There's some technical tweaks in terms of which things are included, but generally speaking, it has the same name and it means the same thing. It's source of funding. Objects and sub-objects. The first important thing is that there will no longer be a sub-object field. So all of the concepts of what it is that you're purchasing or what type of revenue that it is are all going to be baked into the object field. The other important piece that's changing is that we will no longer call them objects. We are now moving to the standard language of account. The project field is actually going to turn into a number of different fields. I believe there are 3 of them, and that break out grants and capital projects and different elements of that process. The important thing to know about project is that you're not really going to be using this field so much unless you're actually in a specific module of the new FMS system that's about grants and project management. So just know that that concept is expanding and that there's a special tool, a special area for managing that. Charge center is the last piece, and the concept of charge center is actually being split up into 2 different fields, department and function. So we're going to spend a little time digging into each one of those and what they mean. So department, first of all, the question is, how is it going to be used operationally? Now, in the current world, a charge center is tied to a specific fund and a specific function and specific purposes. So each manager may have multiple charge centers across multiple funds that they need to keep track of for what they're doing. In the new system, a department will mean something very specific, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that'll mean later. So that same department can be used by all colleges across all funds, and it means the same thing. So if a manager has multiple departments they're using, it's because their operations involves multiple types of elements, multiple types of functions, not because of the number of funds or the different sources of funding. So to visualize this concept, here's a breakdown of the different funds that most of us are dealing with. In the general fund, we have one big pot of money that's sort of subdivided into charge centers through our budget processes. We have individual little pools of money for our course fees and other auxiliary accounts. Same thing with grants, same thing with plant. So if I ask any given manager, how much funding they have access to, that they have authority over, it would look something like this. They might have 2 charge centers that they work with. They might have a course fee. They might share a grant and have a little slice of capital. Thinking of the new system, the value is actually derived from the department number and the fund source, where the connection is. So if I ask the manager of department number 2 what funding they have, the answer is, I have department number 2, but it's in Fund 1 and Fund 2 and Fund 3 and Fund 7. So it's a little more straightforward, a little easier to report on and to narrow in on what any individual manager is dealing with. So we'll talk about this concept a little bit more. The other question is, what exactly does it mean? Well, charge center means a lot of different things. We already sort of talked about that. What the college department that's responsible is, what the purpose was, what the special project was. In the new system, the department's actually going to mean one very specific thing, and that is what service we as a college or a unit are providing to the students or stakeholders. So while every college is arranged differently, has different people in charge of different things, we're all doing generally the same thing for our students and our communities in a broad sort of service-oriented sense. So the new system is going to be focusing on that so that we can have a stable, universal understanding of what's going on. So a few examples of how that will map across. An easy one, right now we have an advising charge center. In the new system, there will likely be a department called academic advising. Makes sense. Facilities has a variety of different things that they use on campus. There might be an M&O account, a grounds account, a district PM account. Each college might use a different mix of these. In the new system, will be something akin to these 5: grounds maintenance, building maintenance, administration, project management, building systems, and PM. And each one of those will be defined. So regardless of what the college is doing or who's in charge of it, you'll use the same ones. So if we're on a college campus, we'll likely have some administration functions and really focus on grounds and building maintenance and some PM. But if you're looking at the district office, most of their efforts likely going to be administration and project management, because that's what FP&D really does for us. Now looking at an academic example, if we look at the Business and Computing Studies division at Chandler Gilbert, they have a number of accounts they use. There's a division level account, a business studies account, computing studies, course fees, a share of capital, a little menagerie of financial sources. In the new system, each college will have access to its existing divisions. So in this case, we would still have a division for business and computing studies, but then we'll have access to all of the course prefixes that all of the colleges are instructing in. So the decision about where to budget money and where to charge costs is really going to be one of saying which things are associated with instructors, direct instruction, costs that can be tied to 1 or 2 or 3 prefixes, and we should assign those accordingly. For the division chair, the support, staff support, other costs that can't be reasonably split up or that benefit everybody equally, shared office supplies, etc., those things will go into the division level account and looked at and spread across accordingly down the line. So going back to that example of how to visualize it, the idea here is that for each of these sort of connections, it has different meanings. So if we're looking at ACC accounting classes, ACC in Fund 1 means the recurring budget for accounting instruction. However, the same department number in Fund 2 is going to refer to ACC-related course fees. The same department number in Fund 3 is going to represent a grant meant for ACC instruction. And in Fund 7, it would be the capital equipment or capital project associated with the instruction of ACC courses. So again, we're getting the same kind of detail, the same separation. However, it's in a more standard way so that we can really understand and dig into the meaning of these individual pieces as the district and the colleges try to analyze and understand what's going on. Another example that I thought of is looking at employee development. Now, on our campus, employee development actually isn't something that has its own account. Now, there is an employee development account, there's a training account, there's some HR money, there's some academic affairs money, and there's probably money elsewhere. But those are things that we're not tracking as a whole. However, if we argue that employee development is an important thing that we're focusing on, well, there's a new department in the financial management system for employee development. So these concepts, these funding sources, these efforts should be steered in the direction of this department so that we can actually see it and understand it and intentionally budget, plan, and move forward with things in that area. So the other piece of the chart of accounts change to charge center is the idea of function. Now, function is something that has always existed, but it's something that we haven't really seen. It's been on the back end. So every charge center that's created, the district office assigned one of these 10 functions to it. In the new system, the function is a separate field, so every time we budget or purchase or move forward with something in the financial realm, you'll be selecting the individual function that goes with it. Now the reality is in most cases there will only be one or two that you need to summon for what you're doing. However, the options for these will be there along with the definitions of what they mean for selecting them as we move forward. So that summarizes the last piece, charge center moving for departments representing the services and the functions representing the type of service that it ultimately is. So another important concept in the new system is the idea of the department tree. So district-wide, there's going to be that list of departments that we talked about, all of the different things that everybody does. Now each college will have the opportunity to go through that list and to choose the ones at any point in time that they're going to be using based on the work that's being done. So let's just say theoretically that our college picked cashiering, purchasing, accounts payable, etc. as things that we do for business. Now on our campus, we'll have the flexibility then to create relationships between these. So I can take these departments and I can group them together and call them Chandler-Gilbert business functions and can report on them. So when I go into the system, I can build a report that says, what are they doing in the business functions, and pull this group together. I can look at what are we doing in purchasing and have property control report to part of that. And that's each college's individual discretion as to how to arrange them, how to group them, how to pull them together for reporting, so that we can take any of these standard departments and we can put them wherever in our organization that they report that is unique to us. Now, as I think about the accounting string, I think about this new structure, one of the logical sort of connections or pictures that helps to make sense is to think of it as a combination lock. Each part of the accounting string means something independent from each other. And the value comes from when you get them all down to the level that you're looking to accomplish. So let's say that we start off any given place selecting the highest level, all of Maricopa, for any of those fields. But then you can narrow in. You can say just Chandler-Gilbert. Well, I want to know just the Pecos campus. I want to know just my general fund. And I want to look at only part-time wages. And then I say, okay, well, let's look at it for my group of departments. And then once I'm there, I'm going to say, no, I really want to narrow into property control with no project and just for institutional support. It's at that level, when you get down to that low level, that you've unlocked it, if you will, that you can enter data, you can process transactions. But you can actually see the reports, you can see the roll-ups, you can explore things at any combination of those levels to really navigate and see and feel the financial information in ways that we haven't really been able to with a set of static reports thus far. One last piece that's important as we think about the conversion over this summer is that there's going to be a lot of moving pieces and we're going to have to learn a lot about the new systems. Well, as part of the conversion, we're going to take all of the charge centers in CFS and they're going to be mapped one for one into the new listing of departments for the new financial system. The important piece of this, however, is that not all of the things that exist today mean the same thing in the new system. And not all of the things in the new system necessarily have discrete charge centers that exist for it. So we had to go through the process of mapping things where they made the most sense, but once we get there, each college is going to have to go through where the people report, where the budget landed, where the expenses are, and realign them for the new definitions in the new system as things move forward. So that'll definitely be a process, and that's something where we're all going to have to put our heads together to get the best information possible and to really work together to navigate what this all ultimately will mean over the first several months of the new year. So it's with that we thank you for your time and direct any questions to the FMS team or if I can be of assistance.